This is Liz Colburn, host of The Morning Uplift. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, this is Emily.
This is Lindsay.
And this is Elizabeth,
co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Once you are done with this episode, we hope you'll come check out our show, Beauties and Headcanons, where we talk nerdy to you about fandoms, fan fiction, and all pop culture for nerds that you can think of. A new show comes out every Friday.
Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Coming soon from Disney, a new retelling of a classic tale, cherished by generations of wooden actors like Hayden Christensen, who strive to someday be a real boy. When you blow up a Death Star, makes no difference who you are. Jedi Knight or Rebel scum, we'll hunt for you. We will hunt you in your dreams. No distance is too extreme. When you blow up a Death Star, as rebels do. Vader's kind, he brings justice to those who oppose the will of the Empire. Ooh. With a bolt of Force lightning, death for you is frightening. When you blow up a Death Star, we'll come for you. Coming soon to a Walmart $5 DVD bin of other classic movies you don't watch near you.
I have you now.
Welcome to another epic edition of Podcast, A Star Wars Story. I am Ezekiel Drews, and with me, as always, is
Danny Tomer.
And joining us this evening is a wonderful person that has a large and huge brain when it comes to Star Wars. He also has a huge nose for sniffing out clues as he observes throughout the known Star Wars universe. His name is Jared Kuehn, and he is a casual observer of the cosmos. Joining us today, Jared, thanks for joining us.
Good evening, gentlemen. Happy to be here.
Cool. Thanks for being here, Jared. What we'd like to do is we'd like to start off with basically getting how you got brought into Star Wars. And then, in addition to that, as you are our guest today, we'd like to have a fun fan fact that you can share with everyone on the podcast. And then we'd like to know, on a scale of light to dark for that spectrum, where you lie.
Sure. So let's see. My history with Star Wars starts at a very young Padawan age. Honestly, it's not the most interesting story in the world. Basically, my parents were hanging out at home once, and they're like, "Hey, let's go to the video store and let's rent Star Wars." So they brought it home, and they're like, "Hey, this is probably kid appropriate. Let's show our kids Star Wars." And so then they showed it to me, and I was like, whoa, it's kind of cool. Is there more of this stuff? And so then, like, I watched more movies, and then I grew up, and then the prequels came out, and then I kind of felt bad about myself for watching those, and then, and
Who
then
doesn't feel bad about watching Jar Jar, honestly?
I know, right? And then
we've had one person that liked Jar Jar, but we don't talk about them anymore.
Understandably so. And now here we are with our next trilogy, making history right now, and it's a pretty good time. So, that's pretty much my story with the Star Warsy stuff. So,
yes, that is an all too common introduction is the indoctrination of Star Wars in our youth, usually through some type of red pill that they are forced to swallow, and it grows inside them like some kind of parasite, which eventually explodes out of their chest with a big heart full of love for Star Wars.
You talk too much about indoctrination, and all I can feel like is like you're telling me I'm a stormtrooper, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Well, I don't know what to say to that.
Let's move on.
I can neither confirm nor deny if I have indoctrinated anyone in the ways of the dark side. So why don't we actually jump to your spectrum where you lie on the side of light and dark? Where do you fall? Somewhere on the extremes or in the middle?
So I definitely feel like I lean towards the light side. I'm the, not the knight in shining armor, but I'm the knight in like probably muddied or, a couple of chinks in the armor because I'd be the guy out there, doing good and trying to help people and be the defender. So I'd expect myself to be more on the light side of things. No offense to you, Zeke.
Hey, fair enough. But, this may have some friction in a relationship. So just so you're aware, Jared. So why don't we jump to your fun fan fact that you'd like to share with us today?
Sure. So my fun fact. So did you know that the design we all know and love as the Millennium Falcon was not the original design for the Millennium Falcon?
Really?
Tell.
Yes. Yes. So around the time that the first Star Wars movie came out, so we're talking 1977, there was a television show that was going on for a couple of years called Space 1999. I don't know if either one of you are familiar with that show.
No, I wasn't around in 1977, actually, just so you know.
Really? So the way the story goes is that show had been going on for a couple of years, and they were starting to work on the Star Wars movie, and they had come up with this concept for a design for the Millennium Falcon, and that design, for the most part, became the prototype for the Tantive 4 ship, which shows up in Episode 4, very start of the movie.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was actually the design they had for the Millennium Falcon initially. And what happened was the Space 1999 show, being as popular as it was, if you look at the main ship that was used in the Space 1999 show, it looks very similar to the Tantive 4. So the concern was that everybody's going to be like, oh gosh, we totally ripped off this design from this TV show. Everybody's going to hate us. So that's when they went back to the drawing board and said, okay, what are we going to do? So they then redesigned the Millennium Falcon into the ship we know and love today. And for the most part, it was a new design, although at that point they had already filmed some scenes for the Millennium Falcon in the cockpit for what is now the Millennium Falcon. So they actually took the original cockpit for their initial design of the Millennium Falcon, and they just basically took it off of that ship. And I guess I I don't know if it couldn't fit in the middle of the Millennium Falcon, which would make the most sense. So they put it on the side instead and kind of taped it in there onto the disc, and there you have it. There's our Millennium Falcon.
Wow. Danny, I don't know about you, but I just got completely schooled on the Millennium Falcon. I feel like that maybe should have been our topic today.
Yeah, for sure.
But unfortunately, we're going to be jumping to a completely different topic. But this may be something to talk about on another episode. So let's jump to our topic for today, though. But that was really great, Jared. I appreciate you bringing that all up. We're going to be talking today about the different styles of lightsaber combat. So there are actually a total of 7 traditional forms of lightsaber combat that people were trained in, and we're going to cover some of those today. So, Jared, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. So 7 forms. So we'll start off with the first form, both in number and in chronological order, which is Form 1, also known as Shicho. It's also known by the name the Way of the Sarlacc, and I think I've also seen it referred to as the Determination form, which seems like a very, very basic description. But the basic concept behind Shicho, it's actually the most ancient form of the 7. And it's also the first form that Jedi learn when they're getting introduced to lightsaber combat. So, for example, when you think of Episode 4 and Luke Skywalker is defending himself from that little robot that's shooting lasers at him, it's actually a basic drill the Jedi use to teach style or Form 1 Shicho. So the focus of Form 1 is it uses a lot of traditional sword techniques and was developed that way because it was the first style they were coming up with while they were getting used to lightsabers. And the form focuses on being able to disarm your opponent without necessarily hurting him, which I think certainly fits into the Jedi mentality in certain respects. Mm-hmm. So you're talking a lot of wide sweeping motions, but it doesn't. The initial form wasn't designed the best to deal with other people who are also wielding lightsabers, which I always thought was kind of an interesting point about it.
Well, isn't that why they developed Form 2, right?
Right.
So, I mean, Danny, you were on Form 2. Why don't you kind of talk about that? Because I know that was what they used to fight the Sith, right?
Correct. Well, the Form 2 was more of a lightsaber to lightsaber or sword to sword form of combat. Most notably, we all know was used by Count Dooku or Darth Tyrannus. Because of his fighting style was more of a what we would call a fencing style. So focus more on flourishing of the blade. You're not jumping around so much. You're just you're there, but you're distracting them with the movement of the blade rather than your body or the force, as some other forms are more focused on. You're very fluid in it. What's very interesting is that as I was reading, most of actually all the masters of Form 2 died in the first battle of Geonosis in the Clone Wars, and only the students of those masters had remained. One of them being Anakin Skywalker, I believe. But Qui-Gon Jinn was actually also, because Dooku was one of the masters, Qui-Gon was obviously one of his Padawans, and he was able to pass some of that along to Obi-Wan as well. Again, it's more of a lightsaber to lightsaber combat, and it pretty much died out as they didn't have as many enemies to fight, like the Sith were out of business, so to speak, and the Jedi had no use for it.
So they probably stopped learning that one more and started focusing on what their more common enemy was, right? Like blasters and stuff.
Right. So that leads us to Form 3, which gained more prominence because as enemies with swords died down, enemies with blasters or guns, they became more active. And most Jedi learned Form 3 as the basic form for combating various enemies. Form 3 is basically you're creating a shield with your blade. So you're just constantly spinning the blade around, you're protecting yourself. They actually recommend that the Jedi who use this form to practice their meditation techniques, because this can be a form of a precognitive state so that they can actually see visions while they are in this lightsaber form. And it's a good way to combat multiple enemies. I think they can handle up to 20 enemies at a time with blasters. Most notable practitioners would be Obi-Wan, Luminara Unduli, Dooku, Vader, Luke, Kreia, Darth Bane, Mitra, Surik.
And I think the most common person that most audiences would know for sure is Obi-Wan Kenobi, just because of how prevalent he is in all the movies.
Sure.
Definitely. And I think I remember reading somewhere that at least some people theorize that a true master of the Style 3, which some people regard Obi-Wan as probably the closest to master, if not being the master of the third style. Some people theorize that if you're truly a master of it, it's nearly impossible for you to die in combat just because of the reflexes you have, the visions you have, and its style's focus on defense makes it an almost impregnable defense that no one can really penetrate.
That's kind of interesting then, because if Obi-Wan was basically the master of Style 3, then really he chose to give up his life in Episode 4, is really what I can take away from that.
Yeah, exactly. I've had the same thought about that too, is, at that point he probably could have carried on that battle, at least, as far as his body physically would let him go, but at least technique-wise, he probably could have kept going for quite some time, but he chose to give himself up and become one with the Force.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jared, I think you were taking over on Form 4, correct?
Yep. Yeah, so Form 4, which actually was kind of a nice transition. So Form 3 is more of a defensive style. Form 4, referred to as Ataru, or the way of the hawk bat, which I don't know what a hawk bat is, but that sounds scary. The Ataru style is a much more aggressive form of combat. It's a very fast-paced style, focusing on strength, speed, and agility. Obviously, probably the main user of Ataru, which we all know and love, is Yoda. He almost exclusively uses Form 4, which is especially helpful for him because given his size, the faster he's able to move, the harder a target he is to hit, and also it makes it easier for him to close the range gap that he struggles with because he is obviously shorter than most people he combats against. I think especially the thing that stuck out to me with this style was that Ataru users especially focus on using the Force to aid their movement and power, being able to surpass the limits that their physical bodies have. So they're intentionally using the Force to kind of as an adrenaline rush to try and come up with more aggressive offensive strikes. But the cost of that is that they're not able to carry that on for an extended period of time. One example of that is if you look at the Qui-Gon Jinn was another proponent of Style 4. And if you look at Episode 1, which it's a prequel movie, but humor me for a moment. You look at the battle between Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul, probably the main reason he lost was he was trying to use Style 4 to overpower Darth Maul. But the battle dragged on, and he got to the end of that corridor, which came very close, confined space, which prevented him from really using Style 4, which likes using a lot of open space in order to get better positioning and get into a better spot in order to attack your opponent. And so really he got confined, he got worn out, and that's really, I think, a significant factor in why Qui-Gon Jinn lost the match to Darth Maul and lost his life.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I never really thought about that. I thought maybe the reason why Qui-Gon died was because he just was overpowered. But I suppose if there was a lot of need to have more of an open space, that probably would have been it would have been a very big disadvantage for him, for sure.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll move on to Form 5 in just a second. We actually need to go to one of our other sponsors here. So give us just a moment. We'll be right back.
What seems to be the matter, Lord Vader? Just trying to get a date online with a cute Jedi girl, but a bunch of these sites are closed. Apparently from a large amount of subscription cancellations right around the time you issued Order 66.
Yes, I can see why that would present a problem. I know. Why don't you try SithLordsOnly.com?
Wow, I didn't know there was a whole site just for us. Okay, I signed up, looking for a match. Wait, hold on. There's only the two of us on here?
You don't have to be lonely. That's SithLordsOnly.com.
All right, and we're back. Thanks for everyone who has been interested in our sponsors. They've been providing us with better and better funding for putting on more excellent shows for you guys. So we just want to give a quick shout out to SithLordsOnly.com. I'm not sure how many of you guys are actually using that website right now, but thanks. Keep at it, guys. It's great. We're going to move on now to Form 5. So, Danny, I think this is on you, right?
Yes. Form 5, also known as the Way of the Great Dragon or the Perseverance form. Two distinctions, the Xian form and the Gemzhou form. Now, those pronunciations are left to your own interpretation, just FYI. The Gemzhou is those who felt that Form 3 was not enough, so it addressed some of the shortcomings of Form 3, and it allowed the user to counterattack, whereas Form 3 was more very, very defensive. Gemzhou allowed the individual to counterattack and be able to overwhelm the enemy. Xian, I believe, was the better ability to guard against blast or fire in ways that the Form 3 could not as well. So it's kind of like taking it to the next step, whereas Form 5 was allowing people to do more counterattacks. And not to say that Form 3 expressly forbade someone to do that, but it wasn't practical under that form. So those are the two different styles. One's very blaster focused and the other one's very lightsaber or sword focused.
So would you say that Form 5 in the second form with lightsaber focus, that would have been a better improvement over Form 2?
In a way. Form 2 was very, very conservative in swings and strokes and strikes and whatnot. Form 5, while being a little bit more active in striking the enemy, it it has its own shortcomings, because if you extend yourself too much, then you leave yourself open for more attack. Whereas Form 2 was still conservative in that regard.
Gotcha. Who were the people that we recognize from Form 5?
Yeah, so I was just about to get to that. So on Mustafar, Anakin actually used Form 5 when battling Obi-Wan, but because he switched to that after turning to the dark side, and because he was still brand new to that form, he was not completely experienced in it, and he fell to Obi-Wan pretty quick. So
not because of the high ground?
Well, gravity has its effects and whatnot, and Anakin had to learn sometime that he needs to feel the fire before he can feel the rain. So
what goes up must come down and get cut to shreds.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh boy. All right. With that, let's move on to the last two styles. I'm going to take point on these one, guys. So there's Form 6, which is called Niman, which is also called the Way of the Rancor, which is kind of interesting because I never think of Rancors being super graceful for lightsaber styles. Like, that's not what I think of. Imagine a Rancor trying to hold a lightsaber. He probably just cut his arm off. That's all I can say. So...
Well, Form 1 is the way of the Sarlacc, which also doesn't make sense. Is the Form 1 the way of the pit?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But oh boy. So Form 6 is kind of like an amalgamation, or if that's too big a word for people, like a synthesis of basically some of the different parts of the 5 first forms. It was especially cool among Jedi who did not focus on combat training because it was easy to master and put into play. But for that reason, Jedi who kind of were masters of forms 1 to 5 would just look at 6 and be like, "No, you suck." So, because it takes elements of all those other ones, and it's not like a master of each of those, it's a master of itself. So the way that Form 6 was used, it was combining using force powers or force techniques with lightsaber combat. So we see this sometimes where Jedi would use the force push to knock enemies away, and that way what he'd be able to do is fight them one at a time. So people that we would see this in the Star Wars movies, that would be like Darth Maul. So Darth Maul uses the Force to blow away one of the Jedi and then singles them down in order to fight them one-on-one. So that's, it's a way to single out people so that way you can take them down easier, especially if one's weaker than the other one. Kill them. That's it. For Form 7... that one is called the Way of the Vornskir, and I'm pretty sure I pronounced it wrong. I'm sorry if I offend anyone with that fact that I could not possibly pronounce that correctly, just because I don't know what that's actually pronounced as. So it was called the most difficult lightsaber form because Mace Windu actually developed this. The technique that he was used was called Vapad or Vaped, or Vapad. Some people pronounce it that way, which is just basically it's a combination of basically their emotions, which there's so a lot of Jedi stayed away from this form because it involved using their emotions in order to enhance their physical abilities. So it meant in a fight, they were going to be attacking with a bunch of unpredictable moves in order to catch their opponents off guard. So that's how, if you look at episode 3, where Mace Windu is fighting against Palpatine, and he's able to catch him off guard. that technique is part of the vapid technique. That's how he was able to get the upper hand on him. I'm sure that there may have been some additional reasons with the fact that Palpatine may have sensed that Anakin was coming, and that's why he allowed himself to. But it's a very unpredictable one. So in terms of how it worked, I would say that there's probably a pretty good chance that Mace Windu was actually able to catch Senator Palpatine, or I'm sorry, not Senator. He was able to catch Palpatine off guard because of the fact that none of the other Jedi were using it. So he didn't have a way of necessarily spying and watching Mace Windu to be on top of fighting him. All the other Jedi, when they confront him and when they're saying, hey, you're under arrest, he kills everybody else because he already knows all those other styles, is able to overcome them like that. It also was thought that that form was very dangerous because it brought people closer to the dark side.
Yeah, well, if you watch Mace Windu's face, like he's pretty ticked off at Palpatine while they're fighting, so I can see that, you know. Yeah.
Well, he even says, like, he's too dangerous to be left alive, which basically just means he's already emotionally invested in basically killing Palpatine at this point. So that's why it got to that point. Also, fun little fact, I've heard that Samuel L. Jackson is interested in basically trying to see if he can do like where he survived falling off the building, which would be kind of cool if that works and they do like a spin-off or something for him. I'd be totally down for that. There would be a lot of explanation that would have to be done for that, though.
There would be, but, you know, I'm sure people are interested in this type of stuff enough that, you know, they would probably appreciate getting some more clarity around some things like this.
Yeah, for sure. Because we never actually see him die. We just see him, you know, being force lightning out of the building.
We know
basically.
that Luke survived some pretty heavy force lightning, and even though he wasn't tossed out a window at the top of Coruscant, I'm pretty sure Mace Windu, with all his experience as a Jedi Master, could survive that kind of fall.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at it like that way, so they both got their arm cut off or their hand cut off. Both of them have been subjected to some pretty physical traumatic experience. I suppose with the fact that Mace Windu was a Jedi Master versus Luke was pretty much only a Jedi Knight at that point, if that, because he had, I mean, how much training did Luke actually get? You know, not enough.
Like a month or two? 3 months at the most?
I don't think it was even a month. I want to say maybe like a week to 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's probably more accurate.
Yeah, so I would just say, going on a limb, I would say, like you said, Mace Windu, with his years of experience, probably most likely would have been able to survive the Sith attack. Now, that brings us to the end of our episode. If you guys would like to, just so you guys know, for all our listeners, we would like to know which lightsaber style that you guys use. Let us know in the comments for the episode, because we would love to know. You can find Podcast A Star Wars Story on Facebook, or send us an email at starwarspodcast18@gmail.com to share your topic or commercial parody suggestions. You can subscribe to this podcast and others from Public House Media on iTunes, Spreaker, and wherever good podcasts are found. We love feedback. So if you guys like this episode, or if you thought it, wasn't that good, please give us a rating and a review, so that way we can keep making great episodes for you. So Jared, I'd like to just take a second and say, hey, thanks for coming on. I know that a lot of people get nervous now when they're coming on to our show.
Oh, my pleasure. Definitely a lot of fun talking to you guys today, and it's very, very interesting discussion today. So thanks for having me.
No problem. Now, unfortunately, once you're on the show, there's a little rule that gets broken. Unfortunately, we have to correct this rule, and this is the rule of 2. So I don't know if you've heard any of our podcasts, but
Oh, I've watched all of them, and believe me,
Oh.
I have come prepared.
Oh, well, I hope you're ready to die then.
Oh, Lord.
Be ready to face
Oh,
my
no.
Style 3.
What? You've got a lightsaber? Time to die!
Not on your life. That was actually not
What's that over there?
Huh? Oh, my right arm, my only weakness.
And now
My
your left
God.
arm!
This is what you felt like. Christian Haydenson, I still fight better than you do.
Now
Oh,
you'll
fast
feel what it's like to
pace.
be Qui-Gon Jinn!
Shame on you. Shame on your whole family.
Danny, I need you to get the alcoholic wipes.
Might I point you to your daughter? I think she knows better than I do.
Good. Everything is as it should be. 2 hosts, and always 2 there shall be. No more, no less.
I don't know how to feel about that.
Anyway, to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to another epic Star Wars story with us. I am Ezekiel.
And I'm Danny.
May the Force be with you.
And also with you.